If you love classic cars, then Donald loves you.
Now, Chuck, we're about as far away from the 55 as we could possibly get with this CBX. And, you know, I said I really love the idea of the single overhead cam 750 4-cylinder. Now we're at 1,000 cc, 6-cylinder, double overhead cam on one scary, scary motorcycle.
Right, and Honda decided we're going to pay tribute to our racing heritage and make a 6-cylinder, but we're not going to do it in a tiny little 250 package. We're going to up the ante to 1,048 cc's and have this fire-breathing beast at the top of our sales ticket. This was 1979 when this came out, and it was radical for its time. 6 carburetors, 4 valves per cylinder, and Comstar composite wheels. This thing had it all from the standpoint of features, but it might not have been the most civil motorcycle to ride because they built up the engine. They didn't really pay that much attention to the frame.
And how can we even use the word civil or think about civility on a motorcycle that's capable of 130 miles per hour?
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that, Donald. You go back even to the beginning of our exhibit, you had motorcycles that could do 110 miles an hour in 1907. So
less traffic around though, Chuck, less traffic.
Indeed. Well, this was not a motorcycle for the inexperienced rider. This was a bike strictly for the person who wanted the ultimate in performance. Now, Honda was very cognizant of the fact that you put an engine this big into the bike, it's an imposing visual, but you don't want to make it so wide that it's totally ungainly to ride. There was another manufacturer, Benelli, an Italian manufacturer, that also had a 6-cylinder motorcycle, albeit it was just a single overhead cam. But they stuck the alternator and various componentry on the outside of the crankshaft. Honda got smart. They said, we're going to build a 6-cylinder, but we don't want it to be really any wider than our 4-cylinder motorcycle. So they took the alternator and various components and put them on a separate shaft in behind the crankshaft so that it narrowed down the motorcycle. And while this one looks awfully wide and awfully big, in reality, it's only a 1/4 of an inch wider than the 750cc 4-cylinder it replaced.
And we obviously know from the performance point of view that it's a very challenging bike to ride and to handle. What is riding a motorcycle like this like?
Well, it's adrenaline inducing is all I can really say. From the standpoint of driving an automobile, it would be like an early Porsche Turbo. Is that all of a sudden, when those all 4 valves open up and it really starts breathing, this bike takes off like a shot. But it has a wonderful, wonderful engine sound. It's not terribly loud, and it is super smooth. Honda was saying when these were at first in the showroom, with the engine at idle, you could balance a quarter on its end on the fuel tank, and it would just sit there. There wasn't enough vibration to knock it off its balance.
There's a common thread that has gone through all of our conversations about Honda, and it's smoothness. No matter whether it's a 50 or 55 or this 1048 6-cylinder double overhead cam, it's all about the smoothness. All of this engineering, all of this design is to provide smoothness and power delivery. And so a motorcycle like this, obviously not a touring motorcycle and not a racing motorcycle. So who would be the customer for this and how would they use it?
Well, this would be perhaps the same type of a customer who would walk into a Ferrari dealership and want to get something that had a lot of pizzazz, it had a lot of style, and I know you're a big style guy, that it really made a statement when you pull up to a cafe or something such as that, riding a CBX. People would stop and stare and say, ooh, look at this. It's just got so much of everything that you had to pay attention to it. So it was definitely a crowd stopper. You know, the other thing that I've always noticed, I know as we just pointed out, you're a style guy. In motorcycling, you don't have as much body work on them, so in many cases, the engine is the style for a motorcycle. And that's what's so great about it, and that's the key that Soichiro Honda really hit on when he developed all these different motorcycles.
It is, as I mentioned before, the way I perceive Soichiro Honda as being this guy that's very much in an Italian mode, because it is about the art of engineering. And that's one of the things that really attracts me to motorcycles. People know I don't ride, but I love motorcycles for their design, their engineering, the ingenuity, the history. And it is truly beautiful just to look at the castings and the design of this engine, and also the way that they do use design in terms of the sculpting of the fuel tank and the shape of the fenders, and the way it all comes together. It tells a story about what you want this to be. This clearly is a beast. It's a brute. It's saying, I'm here, I've got broad shoulders, I've got a broad chest, and I'm going to make it happen.
Indeed. And although this was a motorcycle that really only stayed in Honda's lineup for 4 years, it is now easily one of the most desirable Hondas on the collector scene today.
Well, Chuck, thank you so much for bringing us through a small part of Honda's motorcycle history here at this exhibition, Balance and Power, The World on Two Wheels, 1885 to 1995. And I think it's a very fitting way to end this Honda story with this amazing superbike. Thanks so much, Chuck.
Thank you, Donald.